Once upon a time, there was a woman named Claudia who lived in a quiet city with her beloved daughter, Angela. Angela was the light of Claudia's life, a joyful, bright-eyed little girl who seemed to make every moment brighter. They were inseparable, sharing secrets, laughter, and stories each night before bed. But all that changed one terrible day, a day that would haunt Claudia forever. Angela had gone missing. Claudia searched everywhere, calling out her daughter's name, praying that Angela would come running back into her arms. But Angela never came. Days turned into weeks, and then weeks into months, with no sign of the little girl. The police searched, neighbors whispered, and posters with Angela's smiling face were pinned to every wall in the city. Despite all this, the hope inside Claudia began to wither as the grim possibility of never seeing her daughter again loomed larger every day. Then one day, the police came with news. A child's body had been found in an abandoned water tank. They could barely recognize the remains, but the little girl had been wearing a bracelet, one that Claudia had given Angela. That bracelet was the only thing that confirmed what Claudia could not bear to accept. Angela was gone. Grief tore through Claudia's life like a storm, leaving nothing in its wake. Her marriage collapsed, and she withdrew from the world, haunted by the loss of her daughter. She had no reason to believe that anything could ever bring light back into her life again. 5 years passed in this unbearable silence, every day a painful reminder of what she had lost. But one evening, the silence was broken by an unexpected phone call. Claudia picked up the phone and heard something that chilled her to her very core. A small voice, faint, yet unmistakable, came from the other end of the line. It was a voice she knew all too well. "Mom? It's me, Angela. I'm alive. Help me." Claudia's heart raced. How could this be? Her daughter had died 5 years ago. She had buried her. Yet the voice was real. It was Angela. Confusion, fear, and hope mixed inside her as she tried to make sense of the impossible. Could her daughter truly be alive somewhere, crying out for help? Desperate for answers, Claudia turned to Masera, a former detective who had worked on Angela's case all those years ago. Masera had since left the police force, disillusioned by the cases he had been involved in. But when Claudia told him about the mysterious phone call, he couldn't turn her away. Together they decided to dig deeper into the old case, searching for any clue they might have missed. The investigation led them down a dark path, far more terrifying than they could have imagined. They began hearing whispers of a shadowy, secretive group, a cult known as the Nameless. This group was unlike anything they had ever encountered. They were said to believe in the destruction of identity, in erasing all that made a person human, until nothing remained but an empty shell. They worshipped pain, death, and the loss of self, seeing it as a path to transcendence. As Claudia and Masera followed the trail, they uncovered horrifying details about Angela's abduction. The Nameless had taken her. The child found in the water tank all those years ago might not have been Angela after all. But if Angela had been in their hands this whole time, what had they done to her? Claudia's hope grew darker and more desperate as she realized her daughter might have endured unspeakable suffering at the hands of this group. The phone calls from Angela continued, always pleading for help, leading Claudia to strange locations, an abandoned building, a desolate hotel, places where the presence of evil seemed to linger in the air. With every step, Claudia felt herself growing closer to the truth, but also closer to something monstrous, something beyond human understanding. The Nameless were watching her, pulling her deeper into their twisted world, where nothing was as it seemed. At last, the search brought Claudia face to face with the cult itself. She discovered the horrifying truth about Angela's fate. The Nameless had indeed taken her daughter, but they had broken her spirit, erased her identity, and stripped away the very essence of who she once was. The child who had once been Angela was now something different, something hollow. In the final confrontation, Claudia found herself faced with an unthinkable choice: to accept that her daughter was truly lost, that the Angela she had known and loved was gone forever, or to fall deeper into the nightmare, chasing the shadow of her daughter, risking everything, even her own sanity. The cult demanded her sacrifice, demanded that she too become one of the Nameless, to give up everything that defined her. The room was dark, the figures of the cult looming in the shadows. Angela, or what was left of her, stood at the center, silent and distant. Claudia's heart shattered as she realized the truth. She had come this far to save her daughter, but in the end, the person she loved was no more. The Nameless had taken her, and they had taken everything. In the end, Claudia made her choice, one that no mother should ever have to make. The cult faded into the darkness, and the echoes of Angela's voice haunted Claudia, even as she walked away, alone, forever marked by the horror she had uncovered. In this story, the Nameless were not just a cult, they were a force of darkness, preying on those who had lost hope, who were vulnerable and broken. And Claudia, in her desperate search for her daughter, had nearly become one of them. It was a story of grief, identity, and the terrifying lengths a mother would go to for the love of her child. But sometimes, even love is not enough to fight the shadows. In the final moments of the story, Claudia stood alone in the abandoned building, shrouded in darkness. The air was heavy with the weight of her tragic discovery. The daughter she had been searching for was no longer the girl she once knew. The sinister cult, known as the Nameless, had taken everything from her, stripping Angela of her identity and leaving behind a hollow shell. Claudia had come so far, but the cost was unbearable. In the cold silence, she made the heartbreaking decision to walk away, leaving behind the remnants of her past. As she stepped into the night, the shadows seemed to follow, leaving her forever haunted by the unanswered question of what had truly become of Angela. This story was inspired by the 1999 Spanish horror film, Los Sin Nombre, The Nameless, directed by Jaume Balagueró. Based on a novel by Ramsey Campbell, the film explores the devastating effects of grief and loss, as a mother is drawn into the terrifying world of a mysterious cult while searching for her missing daughter. It's a chilling blend of psychological horror and supernatural dread, focusing on the themes of identity, despair, and the boundaries of human endurance. The film's haunting atmosphere and disturbing plot make it a standout in the horror genre.